Welcome to All Things Social Security. My name is Stephanie Joy of Joy Disability. I am a Social Security disability attorney, and I would like to invite you to watch our daily video tips on the Social Security Disability and SSI claims process each day at the new time of noon Eastern Standard Time here on YouTube on this channel. And on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have our live Q&A live stream. So you are welcome to join that as well. Ask your questions, get there on time, and you'll be one of the first answered. Thanks so much and have a great day. Enjoy the video.
Are we good now, guys? Quick, quick, quick. I think we're good. Someone type it in there, would you? Yay. Thank you, Michelle. All right. It's always something, right? Okay, so let's go back to Sharon. Sorry, Sharon. She says, due to my daughter's many mental illnesses, she has had a terrible time filling out the AFR. I think you meant the function report, right, Sharon? And it took much, much longer than the 10 days. Should she call SSD and ask for an extension? Well, yes. I think always keep in contact with your adjudicator. If you're not going to be, following the directions of timeframes and stuff like that, that is not a hard deadline. That is a, shall we say, a soft deadline. So they will generally give you 10 days extra. And in fact, if you didn't get it in time, you can expect a letter where they say, did you get our thing? We'll give you another 10 days. So it's almost like becoming an automatic extension if you don't send it in 10 days. But if you don't do it the second time, and there's not like a desperate phone call saying just 2 more days, which maybe they would accede to that, you will, oh my goodness. My dog just jumped over a barrier to get in here because I think she's afraid of the storm. Okay, so yeah, tell her that you're late and why. Now it sounds like you guys are almost done with it because you said it took much, much longer than the 10 days. Yeah, you should have called them before if you didn't already, just to ask for more time. And they're really gracious about it. So, I think they have a policy from above that they have to give you more time. But it's not going to last forever. So I would assume one more extension of 10 days. Do a page a day. Probably, well, what is it, 14 pages? Maybe a page and a half a day. Sharon says she already has her mental and general health appointments. So you mean her consultative examinations, I think mental and physical. It's not general health, it's physical to see if she has limitations, not really to see other things. Scheduled next week. Does this mean she's too late? No, because they're unrelated in essence. The CE exams are medical evidence. The function report is not medical evidence. It's her statements of what she can and cannot do and what she experiences. So one's medically acceptable evidence, the CEs, and one is not, but it's still relevant because if she says the wrong thing, it can dispute what would otherwise seem to be an impairment or a limitation from her medical records. So you just want to make sure that you don't say anything that is more capable than the medical records. I mean, if it is, and you want to be honest. But other than that, you don't want to just be like shooting off supposed answers, just trying to make an educated guess without knowing. Because I know how days can wax and wane, and one day you're filling it out feeling pretty good. The answers actually come out better, which is not really representative of the entire, the normal state of the being of that person. Daryl says, ooh, Daryl. Ooh, Daryl's in the house. Daryl has an award. I was approved SSDI on the 29th of July. That was yesterday, Daryl. I'm so happy for you. I'm 100% permanent in total, but I did not get approved until step 5. I had 340% from the VA, yeah, with all their little funny numbers, but it was my medical evidence that got me approved, of course, right? Yeah, we talk about that a lot, right? About how VA findings, because they are answering different questions in the SSD law, makes the SSA answer does not equate with disability just because a VA says you're disabled under their different definition doesn't necessarily mean you're disabled for SSD. But you, Daryl, and I think you had an attorney, pulled it off. Excellent. Would you have a problem if I recommend to others? Absolutely not. Of course not, Daryl. Thank you for all your support, he says. That is my pleasure and everybody here, I think. So that's great. Michelle says, grats, Daryl. Hi, Michelle. And that's when you guys told me there was no sound. I'm just scrolling down. Hi, RD. Hi, Steve Henderson. Hi, Glamour Girl. Okay. Can you hear? Hi, Dimple. Hey, Dimple, how are you feeling? Are you home? Hi, Wayne Quarter from Kentucky. Have a great day. You have a great day, too. Maurice Mabry? Am I saying that right? Or is it Mabry? Maurice says the claimant has at least a high school education. What does this statement mean? What statement? The claimant has at least a... Okay. Was that in an ALJ decision by chance, Maurice? If there's someone who never got past the 7th grade, I think it is considered not what's considered the basic standard education in this country, because that would be more like over 7th grade. So it can affect potentially, and it's not really universal. And I would be in the weeds if I started to go into it now because I'm not going to get it right. But their education level alone would not allow them to hop into skilled work, only perhaps unskilled work. Now, of course, there's plenty of unskilled work, so that alone, being seventh grade, is not going to make you disabled, but it could eliminate a lot of jobs. And remember, the whole goal, guys, is there's 12,000 jobs approximately in this big arse bowl of occupations that they look at, and you're tasked with proving that you can't do any of them. There's skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled. There are rules in the SSA laws and regulations that defines when fact A is true, then these jobs are carved out automatically. And that's some of the stuff you're going to want to learn if you're self-representing or whatever. So you know which jobs you're left with having to disprove. You don't want to be disproving a job that they're not going to hold you up to anyway. Why spend your effort on that? That would be pointless because they're already saying they don't expect you to do that. So you have to focus on the ones that they say you could do, short of medical reasons why you can't. Because some of them are carved out as a matter of law based on certain facts that are evident, like education, recency of education. The other way we get skills is from you got your education and you have your job skills. And the skills that are relevant from a job are not skills from an unskilled job, but skills from a semi-skilled or skilled level job. And that's a term of art. So every occupation is categorized as one of those. And if you only have unskilled in your last 5 years, because remember that's the relevant work period now. It used to be 15, and recently it changed to 5, which was the biggest gift to Social Security disability in my entire career. You just have to look at the last 5 years of work and prove that you can't do them. And if all of those are unskilled jobs, then they can't hold you to anything, even if you did skilled 10 years ago. Maybe you are a rocket scientist, and then the last 5 you've only done, cashier at a grocery store, and I'm not even sure if that's unskilled because you've got to use a computer, kind of a computer, electronic. I'd have to look it up. I don't recall. Or a bagger, or whatever. Unskilled jobs. Unskilled is basically those that you can learn within 30 days of being trained right on the job. You don't have to have any kind of special thing other than that. It doesn't take years and years, which a manager or supervisor might take. So that's what they're saying, that he has at least a high school education. So he has that bar of, I don't want to say normalcy, but poor education is never going to be a reason why he's adding to his disability because he doesn't have a poor education. He has the full 12th grade. And a GED, they generally hold to the same standard as graduating, from high school, even though you did graduate, but it was with a GED. I don't know. Did you graduate or did you just get a diploma? I'm not sure about the rhetoric there and what it all means, but they hold the GED and the graduation from high school, or 12th grade, I should say, the same. Daryl says, now I got approved. Can I get a subscription and get advice? You are the best. You have helped me more than you even know. I just came back. Well, that's super sweet. Feel free to be a member, Daryl, and you'll get all the videos. When I put them out, they go right to members only early access, as opposed to waiting in the queue to go up with the one a days, because I don't like to put up more than one in one day. Okay. The subscription, I think, is just when you subscribe to the channel, Daryl. I don't think that's the same thing. Okay, Tony P. Nice to see you again, Tony. When I applied and got approved, I had next to no communication with anyone, just the basics with forms and doctor's names and numbers. Had 2 CE exams, no courts, no hearing. Does this mean I met a listing? I wouldn't be surprised, Tony, if you met a listing. I forget how old you are. It's possible you met a grid without meeting a listing. If you're under 50, unlikely. If you're under 50, then it would be likely a listing, in my opinion. But if you're over 50, it could be just the grid rules doing their job. But that's still great because a lot of people over 50 have to go to hearing. All right. I love you guys. Congratulating Daryl. That's awesome. Nice and supportive. Okay, Daryl says, my lawyer did nothing. It was your advice from this channel that helped me with the questions and recommendations to send in my medical records. Well, I appreciate that. And I'm sorry if you don't feel confident in your lawyer. Your lawyer may have done a lot. You just don't know about it. You might not know because you can't see in there. I know that's frustrating, right? Dimple says, recovery is moving slowly. Yeah, because I'd asked her how she's doing. Home health nurse should be arriving anytime in the next hour. Overall feeling like a pile of poo. I hope your pile of poo shrinks, Dimple, and you start to feel better. Time heals, right? That's what we're hoping anyway. And Dimple says she's getting her ducks together, though. Good, because she apparently is filing for disability soon. Tony P, 51. Tony, you might have, it could have been a grid or it could have been because you're very young in the 50s, or it could have been a listing. It's hard to say. But if you, I forget if you had a lawyer or not, ask him for the DDE, disability determination explanation. If you hadn't gotten a hearing, in which case it would just be the ALJ decision, and that will tell you whether you met it on the listing or not. You can get that from your field office. Just call them up. They might want a form filled out by you, but either way you can get it with a little nagging or a lot of nagging. Dio, the disciple whom Diogenes loved. My case is formally closed on June 24th. No letter yet. Were you on initial or recon, Dio? Or was it ALJ hearing did you go to? Trying to remember. No letter yet. Fingers crossed for you, Dio. Del said, it's funny you said rocket science. I was on submarines that could launch rockets or missiles. Well, what were you doing on those submarines? Were you actually working with the rockets or missiles or in the safety area or anything like that? Or were you cleaning the toilets on a submarine? You see what I'm saying? Just being fun with you there, Daryl. Deanna, hi Deanna. Hello, how beneficial is it to get 75-day appeal hearing notification? It's not beneficial or not. It means you got denied, right, Deanna? And you got to appeal. So it's not, if you want to make it beneficial, use that 75 days to make sure you've treated for everything you haven't been treating for with a specialist. Start making those appointments. Get those, even if you can't get in for 3 months, get those appointments made and get them in there. I'm speaking generally to everybody, not to Deanna, because I don't know off the top of my head what she's doing right now. Although I will probably in about an hour, right? No, maybe 3 hours. Use your 75 days. Don't necessarily always jump and say, I'm going to appeal the second I get denied, guys. Because if you got denied, it's for a reason. And you really want to carefully consider why. If you have impairments you're claiming and you're not treating with a specialist, you're not treating at all, which is the worst, or you're just mentioning it to your PCP and it's no big deal and you're not getting any kind of specialized treatment for it, that's a weakness. That's pulling you away from that closer to 100% chance of winning. You can never hit 100%, but you want to get as close to there as possible. So all the little nuggets along the way can help get you closer. So that's the biggest thing one can do, I think. 75-day appeal hearing. Greg Hernandez. Hi, Greg. My attorney got paid July 25th. When can I expect my back pay in my account? Oh, he got paid really fast, huh? Did you just get awarded? Did he tell you that? Sometimes if you got a letter that says, sometimes the letters will say they paid us, but they didn't actually pay us. I think one hand has the button about releasing the funds and one over here does the letters. They're like completely different wings, I suppose. So he might not have gotten paid unless he said, yeah, I got paid. See you later. Usually it's not too long after that unless they have to do some deductions between SSI and SSD and all that, or workers' comp. Let's see. We don't have a lot of questions left, guys. Daryl, that's super sweet. Daryl, just do a membership. They're super cheap. That's supportive, and that really does help. I mean, we probably have at least 2 more people in those areas that we most lawyers won't take, even though they know the person's disabled, because the chance of winning is pretty slim and it's going to take probably extra work. So we've probably gotten at least 2 more of those because we can. So, and it's because we can afford to pay for the extra work to do those kind of cases where we're probably working for free. So there is that. Hey, Kelly Christ, how are you? Long time no see. She says, hi, how do I update my medical records, medical appointment summaries to SSA? Can I upload these updates to my account online? I doubt it, but if it has something there that says you can, the only reason I say that is because I don't have a case, so I can't see. I have an online account, I'm sure, but I don't have a case pending, so I don't know if there's a link when you have a case pending about uploading your records. That would be ideal, and I bet you they're moving towards that. That would be my guess, because they're trying to be more efficient. But maybe not. Your adjudicator should have sent you a barcode in one of those letters. Now with the function report, there became a barcode with they have their own little barcode right on this front page of the function report now. I would call your adjudicator and ask for a barcode for medical evidence. And she can ask her to email it to you. She might not be willing to do that, he or she. They might insist on mailing it, which is a pain in the rear. But then you'll have the barcode, and then you take whatever medical records you have, and you put the barcode on top if they're paper, and you fax them to them. You can supposedly mail them, but I wouldn't do that. And then I'd follow up and make sure she got it. The barcode is going to go through some automated scanner thing. It's not really in her hands, and then it will automatically get in the file. That's the way it's supposed to work, and then she'll see it. But I would follow up with a phone call as well once you send it. RD says, I'm 56, filed last October, still waiting to hear something from SSA, denial or approval. This is a slow process and very frustrating. It is, I don't know, this might be a good time for me to, I don't know what day this is coming out, but let's see, what's today? Hold on. There is a video coming out. I know my members got it already, of course, but let me see. I think it came out already. Wait a minute. Yeah, I think it came out already about the increase, the increase in efficiency, the decrease in the duration of cases at in the office, meaning in the field office, I think they were referring to. I just published it. Yeah, I think it is. It might be the one from July 28th. Then there's another report, and these videos lag when the SSA sent out the notice to us about it because I just couldn't get to them that fast. And they weren't urgent. So, sometimes if there's a big SSA news about something immediate, I'll tell you. But this is just reporting on numbers. I believe it's a 25% decrease in the backlog, perhaps, I think. And then another report came out, which is coming out on the 4th, approximately the 4th. And it's the reporting on the 5-year period between 19 and 23, 2019, 2023, and how the numbers and the backlogs and the waits got so bad. And it shows you, well, I babble about the numbers, but the actual report shows the numbers year to year. 24 doesn't look great either, but some of them started to moderate off. So, and then the other thing was all about what's happened in the last, 6 months or so since 2024 and how the backlog claims handling has sped up and been reduced. And I could have sworn it was like 25%. So 25% from something really bad is still something really bad, but it's an improvement that we have not seen in memory. There is that. Okay. But yeah, it is long and it is frustrating. And your problem, well, you filed last October. You're saying you haven't heard anything from the SSA, RD? Did you get we have your claim. Did you get a request from DDS for your function report? Let me know, because if you've got nothing, they might not even have a claim. Maybe you thought you filed and you didn't. Maybe it didn't go through. You should have gotten something. So I would follow up. Make sure it's in there. It could be at the DDS. Like if you did get something, it could be at the DDS and they're just waiting for an adjudicator. And you might be in one of those states that are not really well staffing themselves. Because remember, the DDS guys is staffed with state employees, not federal employees. So the states have a large, I suppose, although I suppose they take heed from the feds, but they have something to do with it, obviously. Justin, I feel like I haven't seen you in a while. Hi, Stephanie. Hearing is 30 days out. Lawyer had my spouse do a letter. Is that helpful? It's not hurtful. It'll be in the file. It's part of the official file. Judges are not going to run their case and their decision on a spouse. Oftentimes, they will even kick to the curb the 3380 that was done by a third-party friend or family member who knows you. And they always say, because the person is a loved one, so I would expect this to be, supportive regardless, and therefore I give it no weight. Understandable, but then why do they ask for the 3380? I suppose it might be for the really, really, really mentally, cognitively unaware, like who's probably going to win on a listing mental anyway, and they want to just get from a third party how bad off is this person that we think is really bad off. Just because maybe, what if that third party says, he's doing pretty good, he goes to the supermarket by himself, can follow the list, and da-da-da, and then suddenly what was in the medical records is no longer as credible as it was, and so the 3380 or the spouse's statement can then go put a fork in it and kill the case because it just made the medical records, it shed a new light on them. Chilly Nick. Chill Nick. Sorry about that. Chill Nick. He says, Chill Nick. I recently got a copy of my CE exams thanks to your videos. Oh, super. I'm still in my initial, and the physical CE report has a lot of inaccurate info or blatant lies. He also claimed that I can walk or sit for 6 out of 8 hours in a workday. That's his opinion. So that's not really a blatant lie. That's his opinion. So I'll tell you in a second the difference. What is the best way to dispute this? My physical CE was less than 5 minutes. You could document. When I say what's a lie is not, if his opinion is you could do that, that's his opinion. And it's a medical source opinion, right? Let me get back up there. If he says, I had him do the heel to toe walk and he did fine, and he never had to do the heel to toe walk, that is a inaccurate, false statement. And yes, you would call that a blatant lie. What I think happens, perhaps, although I don't know, I think they use these canned documents of the template for their CE reports, the SSA, and they fill in the blanks. But why are they not removing the ones that they don't even test for? Or is it because they're supposed to test, but he gave you 5 minutes, he was in a rush because he had a next patient coming in? and, gave you the short shrift and just said he did it when he didn't. I would document that he didn't do that. If he says, these are things I see all the time. If the CE examiner says he had no problem getting on the examining table, yet you did so when he was not even in the room, which we often do, right? How does he know you got on with no difficulty? You got on, but that doesn't mean no difficulty. You might have crawled on your belly up there. You know what I mean? And then hooked a leg up. I mean, so look for things like that where either they weren't in the room, sometimes they'll say had no trouble undressing, yet the person never undressed. So how can you say no trouble undressing? Or you did undress, got in a robe, but nobody was in the room. Usually when I have to undress and change into that robe for any doctor appointment, it's by myself. It's not, and they don't have a camera in there. So that would be a unsubstantiated, made up claim by that doctor. So if you do a letter, and I think you should, if you find these things, keep it without your feelings. Don't refute his opinion. Just refute. Well, I mean, you could say a blanket thing like you could say at the end, his opinions on my capacities are definitely an overestimation of my capacities. You could say that. I wouldn't start getting in the weeds and trying to attack things because you're going to get yourself in the weeds and then you're going to probably contradict something else that you're going to wish you didn't contradict. So keep it, what does it say? Keep it simple, stupid, right? Kiss. Stick to the things that are either true provably or not true provably. His opinions are not the same as what I'm talking about. So I hope I'm making that clear. Other ways, other things that happen is sometimes they'll say he's able to zip, tie, and button. But did he ask you if you could do those things? And did you say yes? Or did he ask you to show him and you were able to do it? Or if neither of the above, he has no way of knowing whether you could zip, tie, or zipper. Sometimes they do that finger pulling strength test. Pull my finger. And not that way, guys. You know that thing that they do? And they're judging your grip strength or your finger strength. That has nothing to do with whether you can zip, tie, or button. So if that's all he did, and then he says you can zip, tie, and button, which means you have fine manual dexterity and you can do all these fun little things like lens fitter jobs, then I think he's pulling a fast one. So just calmly say there are many falsified statements in here, completely inaccurate, and things that never occurred that are in his report. And say them straight. Don't say them reeking with emotion, in my opinion. Now, granted, you're not the professional, so maybe they'll excuse it. But I just think, why make strife where you don't need to, when you could just credibly say, and then you'll seem more credible because you're cool, calm, and collected. If that makes sense, Shilnick. I just made some chili yesterday. It's kind of weird. My son doesn't like beans, so I made it beanless. I figure we can add our own beans later. I don't know if I did such a good job, but it's kind of mild. But I have some belly issues, so maybe that's good. I don't know. I love hot food, though. That's what I'm talking about. Shilnick says the doctor also claimed he checked things that he didn't examine. That's what I'm talking about. Yep. Make a list. Make a list. Go through that CE report. Again, no opinions, not his conclusions of what you can do, but what he did or didn't do. Alleging, is this Mage 885? I got a denial letter for my SSI claim. The reason for the denial was apparently I told them I no longer wish to move forward with the case, which never happened. Okay. Is that, yeah. That's SSI, Mage. I assume you did an SSD claim. You're going to need to clarify. But when I do an SSD claim, and if I'm unsure whether my client is going to be eligible to even apply for SSI, but I think it could be, I click on there in the online application. I'll click that the person's going to apply for SSI. Or I'll click no if I know for sure. I believe that's when they pop out a letter. If you don't end up fulfilling the SSI, or because you have too much income, then their canned letter says they talked to you about it. And it's not true, but it just means that whatever you said in there, like, no, I don't want to apply for SSI when you're in the SSD application, then that letter is going to pop out just to confirm. So I wouldn't worry about it. Unless you are dirt poor, less than $2,000 in the bank, and any other countable resources, the whole kit and caboodle is less than $2,000 if you're a single person, $3,000 if you're married, and you have no working spouse bringing in income, and you're just literally got nothing, living off the charity of others, no savings, then you might want to make sure you get the SSIM. But give it some thought. Hello, Thomas J. Harris. How are you? Daryl, I think under any video there's a join button. So just look at them. There's three levels of membership. There's the first one is probably the most common. It's a couple bucks a month or something like that. That's the one that, you just get early access, priority. If I'm going through a list of comments, like, yours should rise to the top, so they come first. It's no huge thing. You don't get a free attorney for life or anything like that. The third one, which is the most expensive one, is when you get a discount on consultations. But because consultations are expensive and they're one-on-one, they're not for clients, obviously, because clients get my consult the whole time. But it's a pretty significant discount for anyone who needs the advice. But you don't, Daryl, because you have prevailed and you will watch the videos on CDRs and keeping your behind your back evidence always up to date. In reality, not that you have to send anything to the SSA. RD says, my husband is a 100% combat veteran. Thank you to your husband, RD, for his service and his sacrifice. Disabled and also collects SSDI. Will my application get denied because he collects? No, irrelevant, not material. Yours depends entirely on your conditions and your limitations and your vocational profile. So do not let that impede you at all. Daryl thanks RD's husband for his service. I echo that sentiment. Kelly Christ says, oh, she's talking to Chili Nick. Chill Nick. Sorry, Chill. I keep calling you Chili because I have chili on the brain. Maurice says, what are the 4 levels of education at the SSA? I don't know, under 7th grade, over 7th grade, under 11th grade, over 11th grade, 12th grade, and college. If you look at the application when you are filling out, when the options are about how much school you went to, there's actually far more than 4 in there, I believe. So whether you want to call it 4, I mean, technically it could be, I went to 10th grade, I went to 11th grade, I mean, it doesn't really matter. If you got through high school and even like 11th grade, it's such a non-issue for the most part, unless you really had no education. Then it can be relevant because usually that brings up other things. In college, if it's not recent, doesn't really matter either. It never interferes. If you just graduated, last year with an MBA, that might take you out of unskilled into ability potentially to walk into a semi-skilled office job. So that could hurt you in that sense because you can no longer say semi-skilled and above are off limits to me because I've never had more than unskilled work, because now you have skilled education that is very recent. But it's got to be pretty recent. If you have an MBA from 20 years ago, I don't think it's going to make a hill of beans. It's going to be, what did you do in the last 5 years with your work? Because God knows, MBA, that's like a stale degree 20 years later. Like a law degree is pretty much like none of that information is accurate anymore. All the case law is still there, but some of those changed too. So I don't know. Oops, Kelly's talking to Chili Nick. Okay, RD confirms that his case is at the DDS level, and he has heard from that office. Just discouraged and hoping to get an approval. I understand. I do. How long has it been at the DDS? Have you called your adjudicator and said, hey, what else can I get you? I want to make sure you have all my updated records. Here's where I'm at. Blah, blah, blah. Like every month, if you go to, 5 specialists, I'd probably call her or put it down on paper and fax it to her and say, here's my visits for this month with my spine doctor, my this doctor, my urology doctor, my surgeon, my shrink. Greg Hernandez says, yes, my attorney notified me he did get his pay on July 25th. Okay, I just tried to get it. So they know now that your back benefits, do you know if you got the full payout or if it was some limited amount? I say that because sometimes we get ours 6 months later, sometimes we get ours on time, sometimes we get it a couple days before, whatever. But I always wonder if they're still figuring out his back benefits and assuming the SSI is not implicated, because that means they do have to do various things, but the attorney fee wouldn't change. The same overall amount you'd be getting, but they have to pay one, then subtract that from the SSD before they pay the SSD because you're a month's overlapped and you weren't really eligible for that much SSI. I know it sounds weird, right? They do the SSI first, pay you the whole time. Then they go, okay, now what's the SSD? It would be this amount, except we paid him SSI. Now we got to pull the SSI out of the SSD amount because he wasn't eligible for the SSI now for all these months because he got SSD for all those months. So that's what I think takes longer for you guys. The net amount you're getting is the same. It's going to be the SSD amount in total. And that's why they could probably figure out the attorney fee beforehand. But they don't know exactly how yours is going to be because they got to do the SSI, pay it. Then it goes to a totally different office who does the SSD. So you have also different offices. It goes from one step to the other step. SSI, I believe, is done at the field office, and then the SSD is done at the payment center. And so the first one has to get done completely, and then that stuff gets shot up to the payment office for the rest of it, the SSD aspect and the offset. Lionel says, hello, Lionel. I was awarded 2 weeks ago and will turn 65 in August. Will likely get a CDR. There was a, I doubt it. I highly doubt it. I would bet my right arm on it if I had something to gain otherwise, besides just being right. Got to be 65. 67 is your full retirement age, right? And the earliest CDRs are like 6 months a year, 18 months, but those aren't that common. And at your age, really uncommon. So then the normal is 3, right? That's the standard kind of. And you'll be 68. And you will not be on Social Security disability. So there is no such thing as a CDR on retirement. Okay. Hi, Trish Wade. Nice to see you. Always nice to see people even when they just say hi. You don't have to have a question. You know, I think he's talking, are you talking, Chilnick, about, let's go back up, the CE report? Yeah, definitely template or can narrative because they have to get, I mean, which is fine because then they hit all the topics they need to, but you have to go through it, Doc, right? You can't just leave things from your past patient. Going back down, scrolling. Sorry, guys. When this comes out on replay, all these little gaps where I'm scrolling will be. Chilnick says, thank you for your response. It was very clear. God bless. Thank you, Chilnick. I appreciate that. I aim to please. Okay, Chilnick is talking to Kelly. John's travel adventure. Hi, John. Good to see you. I get to do another mental CE. Fun, fun. Is this normal for reconsideration? It's a telehealth. So I think you're saying you're going to have 2 mental health CE on the same stage. Is that what you're saying? It's not like an initial and then one on reconsideration? Or did you have one on initial and now you're having one on reconsideration? I'd say either one is unusual. However, if your case has taken a really long time and the CE the first time was a year ago, I could see maybe. But they don't really like to spend money unless they're like sending out duplicate letters and stuff, then they don't mind it. Yeah, duplicate letters. It drives me insane. I'm like, that's taxpayer money and stamps and ink and some dude shoving it in the envelope. Like, oh my gosh, I get duplicate letters all the time. New Jersey was chronic for it out of the DDS. No wonder why they have no money. Kelly Christ. On every single case I had in New Jersey, which was my heavy back in the day because I was from New Jersey. Now I'm in Pennsylvania, and now I'm in like all 10 regions, in the country. But the heavy was New Jersey, and every single case I had, every letter coming from the DDS in New Jersey was in duplicate, in a separate envelope, separate stamps, coming together in the same mail. And I wrote to them numerous times and said, you're wasting money, stop. And they ignored me. All right, Jersey, have it your way. That's why I moved. All right. Kelly says, oh, she's talking to Chilnick. Okay. RD says, thank you, Stephanie. I would love to hear about a recent case you had in front of a SSA judge. A great story would be appreciated. Well, trying to think there's any, it would depend. I mean, I do talk about them sometimes. They're not always exciting, though. If something bizarre comes up, I usually make a video out of it so you guys can check it out. So I'm not sure what you would like to hear about, RD. Okay. Maurice Mabry says, I didn't receive any back pay because my onset changed to a much later date. Was that the February 2025, Maurice? Very frustrating. I've had those too. Those are my unintended pro bono cases because there's going to be no fee for me either, despite what could be 2 years of work, sometimes 3. It's very frustrating. I know it's frustrating for you. You wanted to have that nest egg when you couldn't work and you knew you couldn't work, but they decided that the evidence wasn't strong enough until this later date, and that's your onset date. Some people appeal it. That's got its risk. We did an appeal a couple years ago for one that they said, we find you disabled, but not till your 55th birthday, which was last month. We'd been working this case for a couple years. The person was like 53 when we started. It was like heavy equipment construction work with now like shoulder surgeries and mental health. And they let him win, but not until he was 55. That was like, we got the letter like the next month. And he was it really ticked off. And I don't blame him because he was like, I'm done without 2 years of income, And we appealed, and the ALJ kept the same old date. So we went through a whole nother year of work. You got to kind of, now he didn't reverse it, which he could have done. He could have, I don't even think you're disabled because I think even at 55 now that you are, 56, you could do voluntary work and you could transfer the skills of that construction job to writing manuals on big, heavy equipment material. I jest that isn't really a job, but you just never know. You got to be careful when you're appealing. We really didn't have much to lose because I knew the SSA wasn't going to be a total arse, the judge, and be like, go from the SSA thinks he is disabled at 55 when you have those little really good rules to saying, no, not even there are you disabled. So not only do you not win at 53, I'm not even going to let you win at 55. I didn't expect that. So I was like, okay, we'll appeal. I'm not so sure I would do that. It would really depend on the case now. because it was a lot of work, and honestly, we have to be smart about how we spend our labor hours too, and the prospects of that changing. That taught me that the prospects might be very low when they've awarded at 55 with a age category change. So every case stands on its own though, so you have to look. John's travel adventure says, oops, I called my local congressman about checking on why my attorney is not attached to my case yet. Just received the consent form for them to contact SSA. Perfect. That's going to be our next move on a handful of cases, actually. I just reached out to one client and said, call your field office. We are still not connected. Another one, they've each been like 3 or 4 months and we're not connected. I have a third one. I just sent in my initial documentation end of June. This one is on its way to hearing. So the whole point is I need to get in earlier or I can't do my job. And so I'm really ticked. So this morning I sent in another, and I haven't emailed him yet or messaged him through the portal, but my client is going to have to call the field office and say, you have to connect my attorney. I'm heading to hearing, and my attorney can't even do anything on my case. I can't access anything. I can't see what medical's in there. I can't do squat. I can't prepare for hearing. I can't do anything. So I'm a little aggravated. This has been years now. So it's been a long time. It's nothing new, but it's entirely aggravating all the time when it happens. And then some just whip through like this and they're connected. I don't, it's definitely each field office having issues. I understand they're doing a lot better now, so it's improving, but that still doesn't mean you don't still have your ones that don't. Improvement of 25%. I was saying before, when it was 3,000% underwater, it's an improvement, but there needs to be a lot more improvement. I feel like there should never be a reason why attorney connection papers would take more than, say, 48 hours or 2 business days. That needs to be a priority. It's got to be a priority. So John says, I had on initial and now reconsideration. My initial was filed June 2024. I had 2 strokes within 24 hours, so I have cognitive and neurological issues. Sorry to hear about that, John. All right, and so then you finally got an attorney. That's good. That just brings up a side point. Alleged disability is cognitive and neurological issues. Yet he felt, I'm just throwing this out there as devil's advocate, John, don't take this personally. You did feel confident enough, apparently, to act as your own lawyer on your case. That speaks a lot to your confidence in your cognitive ability and neurological potentially. Your ability to sit at a desk for a while and get the paperwork done and, blah, blah, blah. Get on the computer, use a computer, file the application. Ooh, computer savvy, blah, blah. It says a bit anyway. All that could be disproved potentially, but so I think it might be unwise when someone who says they have distracting depression, anxiety, or a blatant mental illness like paranoia, schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, severe mood swings, if there's a mood disorder, and then but you feel like you can do high-end work such as file and pursue and develop your own case. I think it might, in theory, kind of detract from the credibility of saying, I am so screwed up, I can't even do a simple job, Judge. You see what I'm saying? So just think about it. Cheryl, hi Cheryl. Yeah, that's New Jersey. I know. You still live there. I'll probably be going there September to go out to lunch with an old friend in my old stomping ground where I grew up in Chester. She lives in Long Valley, but haven't seen her in a few years, and time is getting away from us, And, I'm at the age where you start losing people. Not that I anticipate losing this friend. I'm just saying in general, like we see, even some of our favorite TV stars, we had that bad week. What is it? What's his name? Michael Jamal. And we had the Hulk, and then Ozzy, all in that little, and there's been more, I think, but those are the 3 I'm most familiar with. I don't know. So I got to get out there. I just got to take a half day, boogie out there. Kelly Christ says, that's awful what they do. No back pay when you're expecting it and deserve it. I know, Kelly, and it's the stuff that really could, back pay is so valuable to a claimant, I think, because it gives you, when you get the back pay, let's say you're like, oh my God, I got credit cards, this, that, the other thing. You don't necessarily have to spend, you can pick and choose what bills you pay. And, credit card, like any other business does. And you could use it because I need a new roof, and then say, to the credit card company, there's many ways to skin that cat. But if you don't have debt in particular, it's a really great way to be able to get things done that you need to get done that you put off, like that new roof if you needed, or your car is like a hunk of junk, and you can get the down payment for it, or just a ton of things. Or even getting like a new house that would be more affordable. Maybe you could, use it as a down payment. Now you can get a tiny thing that is within your SSD financial picture. Kevin Johnson says, hello from Tennessee, still enjoying you. And Jim Ginsburg every Wednesday. I know, I have to reach out to him. I'm going to try to pop in tonight and say hi, at least into the chat, right? Tonight. Yeah, tonight. I think it's on tonight, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. John says, filling out the forms takes me days to do, and it is noted on my forms. The strokes take, I understand, but again, talk is cheap because everybody will say it. That's what I'm saying. The strokes taking away my dominant hand ability for me to write more than a few minutes, all noted on my forms. Totally get it. I'm just showing you the other possible perspectives. So just something to think about for maybe not you, but potentially other people. Yeah, Kelly says back pay and when family's been supporting you. Yeah. And I can get that. Like, you really want to pay back family. They're the ones that stuck by you. Right? Put a roof over your head or paid that mortgage when you couldn't for like 18 months or something. For sure. It's very crushing. And it's so sad because you get the joy of prevailing and the thing is over. And you're so glad to get your monthlies. However, you still have that big burden of that debt, which again, guys, debt to family, which often they forgive, is not the same as debt to a profit generating entity like a credit card company. And I just want people to think about that because when you have Social Security, if you don't have other assets that are garnishable, sometimes you got to pick and choose which bills you're going to pay, like you would do anyway. If the money you have doesn't cover them all, and I'm not pushing consolidation or bankruptcy or anything like that, but I'll tell you something. Sometimes I will say bankruptcy can be a freeing thing. And I don't practice bankruptcy, but I've seen many people, many people get such a blessing out of it because it is a total fresh start. And of course, everyone's situation is different. If you have a house that you want to keep, you have to use certain avenues. You want a really, really good bankruptcy attorney. But it is something to think about if you're heading into SSD and you have a significant amount of debt that you don't think you're going to be able to pay, and it's just going to become a snowball, continued nightmare. It's going to ruin your peace of mind. Bankruptcy actually cuts that off. No more ruined peace of mind. It can be really, really amazing, and that's why it's there. And people say, oh, but that's humiliating and that means I'm a failure. Businesses do it all the time. It is a business decision, and you are the leader, the head, the CEO of your body and your resources, of everything you have. Your human resources, which is your body and your ability to make money, your capital, your ability to earn interest. You are the CEO, or if you have a spouse, usually, hopefully it's joint. But those are business decisions, and I don't think anyone should feel humiliated. I mean, it's one thing if you do it and then you continue to screw up, then you got a problem. But a lot of times, the need for a bankruptcy or the overage of debt is due to things outside of one's control. Disability, medical bills, having to borrow, having to use those credit cards because I can't work. And I'm hanging by the skin of my teeth to stay alive and save my house while I'm waiting for Social Security disability. So something to think about if it's up your alley and something you'd rather do rather than have unending debt and not be able to pay your family back because you're paying that commercial creditor who for some reason you put ahead of the others. I don't know why. They don't put you ahead, let's face it. And they charge those really high interest rates because of this risk that they take. All right, enough said. That was very off topic. Daryl Smith says, I also had cognitive and neurological issues. Medical records were key for me. The TBI was the toughest to get. Okay, RD, this is the beauty of it. No. Now, keep in mind, garnishing SSA, when you garnish something from the source, that is different from, say, SSA won't send the money. So you got that. But once SSA releases it to you and you keep it in your bank account, there are special rules that say creditors can't lien certain parts of a bank account if it's got these Social Security monies in it. However, and I'm not going to go into the weeds on that because I'm not going to get it right, but it is not, if you have $15,000 in there, I'm pretty sure that's not going to be protected. I think, don't hold me to it, guys. You can all do your own research. It might be 2 months worth of Social Security is protected, and anything over that is not. Do your due diligence. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing, and that's the only thing I'm offering in that area. They can get that credit cards can ruin your credit. Now, granted, bankruptcy is going to put a big ding in it too, but it will go away in a number of years, which probably fly. And it's just something to think about. Your bank account is partially protected. Other assets technically can be levied against. Not that we see that typically. Obviously, if you have a car and you don't pay on it, they're going to repossess it. That's part of that contract. Houses will be foreclosed upon, right? So, and they can put a lien on your house, but if you bankrupt them, I don't think they can. But again, talk to a bankruptcy person and ask around. I mean, ask people who have been there and see what they say. Everyone I talked to, it was the blessing and it was the new start, and then life soared after that. So, we get some bad things that happen to us and we cannot dig out those bills. Debt just compounds itself. So, and when it comes to medical, that's how most people end up screwing up. Yeah, a 22-year-old might get into credit card debt, and that's really bad. And yes, sometimes when we're older, I remember having some big credit card bills and looking at the interest and being like, holy. And it took years of extra work to dig out of that. But I would just say look into all those options. John's Travel Adventure says, these symptoms are also noted in my medical report. I share all symptoms that affect my daily activities. That's very good, John. The frustration of not having my lawyer access my case is making me do more than I can do. Yeah, it is. Have you been making the phone calls, did you say, to the field office? It's the field office's responsibility. And I think you said you've now reached out to the congressperson. I think that's good. I mean, if it's been more than, like I said, I don't think it should take more than a week, but I know it does. If it's been more than 30 days, I think it's time to start squealing or squeaking, being the squeaky wheel. Oh, John, that's no problem. Sorry for all the messages posted. No, that's all good, John. All good. We don't even have a lot of questions in here today, so we're at about the hour mark. Thank you, Daryl. Adam's here. Adam's in the house. Hi, Stephanie. Adam from East Hartford, Connecticut. You're a hop, skip, and a jump away, Adam. I'm in Northeast PA, as you probably know. All right. I don't see any more questions. Anybody? Are we good, guys? Could be short and sweet. Nothing wrong with that. Oh, John's talking about the failure of the field office to process the attorney representation documents. I think this is like a due process violation to me. He says he called the field office. The attorney filed the 1696 3 times and called twice. That's what we do too. Send it. Like I said this morning, I sent 2 or 3 of them for the 3rd time. Well, one of them it was the 4th time. I put on the fax, attention manager, that's claimant is having his rights deprived of him. Like, will it go to a manager? Who knows? Because I've learned that faxes to the field office is now going to a big fax receptacle. And whoever is in charge of it, slowly, despicable. It's just not working. They've got to do something better with that. Okay, Daryl Smith says, do you know anything about Medicare, Medicaid while using the VA? Well, if you're getting SSD, Daryl, you're going to be entitled to Medicare. You're going to have to decide if you don't want to pay the premiums for Medicare. If you are on Medicaid and now you have too much money for Medicaid, you might lose Medicaid and be sticking with your VA or doing Medicare. I can't say that I have studied up on the intricacies and given them much thought. I would be interested to know what a lot of our veterans are doing. They have the VA coverage for health. However, you're kind of stuck with the VA, and the community access is maybe not as robust as, we hope it's going to become. And do you always want to be going to a VA with Medicare? Would it be worth paying the premiums? That is really up to each individual, I think. But I would reach out to other veterans and see, hey, who's got both VA plus Medicare? And see what they say and what their reasoning is. Like, are they like, there were so many doctors that I wanted to see. VA isn't really known for like top of the line. And I'm not putting down those doctors that work there, but I don't really like the way they record things. So I do kind of think it's kind of shabby with medical records. I don't really see them, maybe because they got too many people and not enough doctors. So it's not necessarily their laziness or their fault, but I just don't necessarily see records being as express and articulate as I would like to see to describe the veterans' problems. But I will say I see that also with doctors outside the VA in spades. You guys hear me biatch and moan about it all the time. I'm like, what is it? 5% of medical professionals know how to articulate the condition of their client. How do you not even put in some of the functional limitations he talks about? That's so important. And then discuss in the record how that spinal stenosis might be causing that inability to stand more than 15 minutes at a time. That would be something I would expect with his condition. Why aren't they doing that? They're not. They're just not. And it's pathetic. RD, you're very welcome. Hi, Maeve. Maeve says, okay, I used to work for one of the companies that had your credit records. Okay. So like Equifax, TransUnion, or Experian, maybe? As for BK, it is a big hit, but it comes back really fast because once done, the risk of you doing another goes away for 10 years. That was that was something I thought about too. Once you do it, yeah, like a couple years, you might be like, oh, I have to get that credit card with a little $60 a year payment requirement. That stinks. That's how you build your credit back. And within a few years, this is my understanding, it doesn't even take for it to scroll all the way off your credit report, which it will do. What is it, 8 years or 10 years, Maeve? Your credit's going to start to climb up. So, keep a little nest egg in your mattress if you need something that you would otherwise be maybe needing a credit card for a year or two. Probably even in the same year, you can get one of those prepaid credit cards. And I don't mean prepaid credit card. I mean the credit card that might be $500 limit, and you might have to pay $60 a year. They want to make their money, but you're building your credit. Store cards might be a way to start too. I don't know, maybe is that as good, or is that okay to do for people that can't really get a lot of the other ones? And just never let that credit card not get paid off at the end of the month, maybe, so that you never get in that jam, of credit card debt. And yeah, the whole fact that you can't file again, I would think that creditors would be like, oh yeah, that person filed for bankruptcy 3 years ago. It says it was due to medical, which was outside of their control. Doesn't mean they were frivolous spenders. And now he can't file for another 7. I'm going to loan him this money because he can't bankrupt me, right? Is that the theory, Maeve, I think? RD says, my husband discontinued Medicare and uses the Long Beach VA for his medical. It all depends where you live and the access to care to cancel Medicare. That makes sense to me, RD. Yeah. And if you don't plan on moving, like you're there, that's where you guys are going to hang your hat, for the rest of your beautiful golden years or whatever. That makes sense to me. And it's not like he can't later go on Medicare during a general enrollment. He might have to pay a premium penalty, though, penalty premium, because I don't think, and this is pathetic, I don't think VA is creditable coverage. Do your due diligence on that. If it was creditable coverage, which it would be, for instance, if you were working and you had health benefits and you could put your husband on it while you're working, that's creditable coverage. So that if that's all he has and he doesn't take the Medicare because of that, when he does, if he later goes on Medicare, right after he gets off of that, maybe you lose your job or quit or retire or whatever, then he will not have a premium penalty because he had creditable coverage all those years when he could have had Medicare but did not take it because he had creditable coverage. But for some reason, I don't think VA is creditable, and I don't think that changed. So again, little knowledge is a dangerous thing. Look into it. But what RD says makes sense to me as a consideration, depending on the person. But if you're not traveling around the country, Medicare goes with you. So that's the beauty of Medicare. You can travel within the country, and if you get hurt, whatever doctors out there that take Medicare, which most of them do, I feel like, you'd be good. But if you don't do that and you really aren't going to be traveling and you're going to be, then yeah, VA. And plus VA probably has something about covering it if it's an emergency. So if you were to travel, at least you're, you couldn't go get a specialist out 3 states away, but you could, well, unless it's at a VA, but you could probably get it covered if you go to a non-VA emergency room, right? If I recall, I had some senior family members that didn't take Medicare, only did VA, but then opted for non-VA when a real, I'm talking brain damage, brain spilling out, brain surgery, cranial this. But the wife, I think, was a real aggressive negotiator. So I think it kind of worked out okay. Plus, they had a ton of money, Okay, so Maeve says, oh, Maeve worked for Experian. And then she says, it changed at times, but I think it's still 10 years it falls off. That seems to ring a bell. Is there something about 8 years? But you can't do another in that period anyway, so carefully rebuilding is good. Yes, store cards too. Good to know. I love this diversity of information we can get. Plethora of information. All right. We are at almost 2:15. Are you guys good? No more questions? Because if so, I thought I'd split. I want to work on an appeal and get my next appeal out. So what do you think? And maybe an application too. I got a few lined up on my little roster for this week. RD says, we also have government insurance, retired for life, and he uses it. Wow, so you got some good stuff. Woo! And he uses his VA. He technically had all 3 once SSDI approved. Everyone, veteran, will need to look at all options. The VA has great coverage. Okay. Yeah. Good to know. Yeah, you got options there, RD. That's great. That's peace of mind a little bit, isn't it? It really is. And depending on the income, now if you're VA and SSD, you probably have good income, so you're going to live comfortably. For people that have a lower SSD and that's all they have, that 185 or whatever Medicare is this year, premiums, that can be quite a hit to the wallet. I mean, it's still worth it. It's like $2,000 or $5,000 less a month than you'd be paying, and obviously not paying if you had to, buy it on your own. Sorry, I got a hair in my eye or something. I don't know. Sound right? Maeve says the scoring is different among big companies. They have their own algorithms they buy, but the standard you see online is good info. Bankruptcy on record equals you can't bankrupt on them. Right. Your risk looks okay as long as you're careful. Yeah, that makes complete sense, Maeve. And it rings true with other things I've heard over the years. Loki, nice to see you, Loki. Am I saying that right? I don't think we've met. Loki says, I got approved last month at 59. God bless. I'm so glad for you. Your show was helpful to me, even if it was just for anxiety. Thanks. If I could relieve anxiety in any way, even just like a smidge, I'll take it. That's worth everything. Should I ask for my file, which has a 5 to 7 year diary? Thank you so much. Took 1.5 years to be positive. I would get, and I will say this to everybody. When your case is over, win or lose, I would go to SSA. Now, if you had it with the ALJ, you could still do this, but you can get it from the ALJ, and you should be, before your decision, before your hearing, really. Get it from the SSA. Get your whole file. Don't let them tell you you can't. Get the 3288. I got the one that points out to them the palms that they cannot say. You have to specify which pieces of information you want. You want the whole damn thing. And I would get it, and I would keep it, because that will help you be able to know what they had when they awarded you. So that's your comparison point for your CDR. And you never know where you might need it later. Let's say you have I don't know, probably the fact that you're awarded will be enough, but I don't know, what if there's some program that says we want to evaluate your disability and you might get this reprieve from a certain tax or something. Maybe you need those medical records. Or, well, yeah, I was going to say some of the places that used to have property tax abatement for disabled or retired people, I think, or specifically retired, I'm not sure, which brings up a whole nother 9-yard story. My grandmother-in-law, who passed away a few years ago, I knew her before I knew my husband, not long before, but a couple years, and she had built a house. This is in New Jersey. Her and her husband in the 50s built a little house back when Chester, New Jersey was not, the less accommodating for this, that it was a nice farm town back in the day. And not that it's not a nice town, but it's a whole different income level, if you know what I mean. And after he passed, she lived there for years to come. And, son, grandkids, great grandkids. My husband is the grandkid. Her property taxes in a town like that were far too high on her meager Social Security. Now, when you're a widow, you get one Social Security, and her husband was a contractor, and she didn't work much. She was a kind of a stay-at-home, helping out kids in the area, volunteered, stuff like that, old school. And I mean, she died at 96 2 years ago, so old school. And she was born in 1927. But they came at her. I'm not going to name names, but I'm sure it's look upable. They came at her and said, you haven't paid property taxes in X years. And she's like, that's because it was abated because my husband is disabled. And he was a disabled veteran too. And maybe it was just disabled vets. I'm not sure. But and they said, well, prove that you were awarded that. And she had no paperwork. He died like 30 years prior. And they took away her property tax rebate, or whatever you want to call it. And now, in Morris County, New Jersey, your property taxes are quite high, even with a petite little house like that, like half an acre or whatever it was. And it made it unaffordable for her to live there after 50. It was over 50 years. I think it was being built in early 50s. So those things, if you can keep all your stuff, I say do it. Like, little did she know, that was before computers even, right? It was really sad. So she moved out of there by 2010. Had to go live with her son and daughter-in-law, who's now an ex-daughter-in-law. And that's where she passed away. Out of state down in South Carolina. Okay, so Daryl's confirming that the VA does pay for emergency rooms. Thank you, Daryl. If you are on VA and you have, you're traveling and you have to go to a nearby emergency room because you're not going to go find some VA one out in the, wherever you are, they will pay, he says. That was my understanding too, Daryl. If you 100% permanent in total, you can get VA Champ. Okay, good to know. Maeve says, shout out to LB Peeps. I lived there for years. VA is good there. I think she's talking about, is that Long Branch, California? Okay, so that's Kelly and Maeve. All right, so RD says that, yes, she has Champ VA. Awesome. I don't even know what Champ is, so that's pretty cool. Learning a little bit more about VA here. I was almost going to be a VA practitioner. I actually had the credentials, and I just didn't do it because I didn't feel like the training was sufficient to make me the master of my game. You know, I'm a little anal about Social Security disability, and if I couldn't feel that as masterful in that as I made myself become in this when I started, I wasn't going to do it because God forbid I screw up a case for a veteran, not on my watch. So I didn't do it. I could still do it, but again, this is so busy here. There's so many disabled people without the VA, and we have VA practitioners, so it's not like there's a shortage. I don't think. But anywho, it is 2:20 Eastern Standard Time. Are we done, guys? Are we done? I think we are. All right. So if you just want a few of the upcoming videos, I think I mentioned obviously, well, tomorrow you'll have the replay of this Sans All the Scrolling Silences. Friday is fraud law review. This one is about a Pennsylvania resident, the state I reside in, who steals dead man's Social Security benefits for nearly a decade. Weren't they saying that there's no dead man's Social Security numbers being used to steal? Well, we keep reporting on them, and it comes from the OIG, and there's prosecutions in every single one of the ones we report. So I think they're kind of not telling us the truth when they say that. It's an inconvenient truth, of course. It doesn't support a particular agenda. Okay, then there is another one coming up, looks like on the 2nd or so of, it's the explanation from about the passage of the legislation, regular order versus reconciliation. And if it's reconciliation, the big one we just had was reconciliation and what that meant and why it couldn't include a lot of the things that we might have wanted to see. Who knew? I don't really study up on that stuff. So it's very interesting. So it has to do with how Congress does that. And if we want changes to Social Security disability laws or effect on those monies, there's a certain way they have to do it. By law, they can't do it with reconciliation. And then coming after that, we have that report about the 2019 to 2025 5-year period and how the backlog grew during those years at the DDS level, and how they're starting to now table off and come down. Then we also talk about, oh yeah, guys, when your doctor's report says your diagnosis is suspected, which means it's not a diagnosis. It's really something to pay attention to, because the SSA is not going to be able to find that you have that impairment until they no longer suspect it, but they officially say she is diagnosed with it. This is something that one never would have expected, and we have to deal with it now pretty regularly. So patients really have to, well, you can listen to the video, but it's a big thing to look out for. Whether you listen to the video or not, get your medical records and make sure that those things are official diagnoses, and where they diagnosed it, when they diagnosed it, and based on what, because they can't just say it's a diagnosis. They have to have the steps of, well, she has this, and this test showed this, we're ruling out these other things. Yes, she has Sjogren's disease or syndrome or fibromyalgia or, whatever it is. All right. We did have some testing of the 800 number. I don't know if you guys saw that. Did one of them come out already? I just did it. I popped it out fast, though, because I was like, members only got it fast. Yeah, I tested the 800 number on July 28th to see how fast it went through. You'd be shocked when I did it at 1:21 in the afternoon, Eastern Standard Time on Monday. It was beautiful. And you'll be more shocked how different it was when I did the same thing at 6 o'clock p.m. So I know they've reduced the average time to 13 minutes, which is fantastic. 30 seconds is great, and that's what brings down the average on all those 30-second ones. But then you have the 2-hour ones that probably all of them together average to 13. So you can still get the 2-hour debacles, but I guess the majority of them are really fast, so that's good. All right, I'm going to check one. I'm just going to go back and see if there's no questions, and if there isn't, I am going to say adieu. Yep, looks like we're good. La Lulu says, catch the replay soon since you're winding. If you have a question, La Lulu, yeah, I know you're here late, my dear. Yeah, catch the replay. That's all good. It's only going to be like an hour, not even an hour and a half. All right, awesome. I will see you guys. So the videos are coming out noon now, every day. And of course, Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Next Wednesday, I will be in Bethlehem, PA, working from a hotel. Yeah, my husband's going in for surgery, so I got a hotel room right nearby. So for a few days, so hopefully everything will go smoothly and he'll be able to be discharged within a day or two. But I got the hotel, so I could drive home, but it would be something I don't really want to do, and I want to be right there with him. And then I will Wednesday do the 1 o'clock p.m. live thing from the hotel. Okay, you'll probably see this very same background, but that's where I'll be. And then a couple weeks later, I was gonna say I am going away to New Jersey. Carol, are you still there? A couple weeks later, just for a little downtime with the family for a weekend. So I'll be back here to do the live 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesdays. So I will see you guys then. If anybody has any ideas for videos, please always share them. I know I get a little bit behind on some of your ideas, but I don't mean to. It just takes time. When it's not something that's happening in my workday that I'm sharing, I always want to research just to double check nothing's changed if you ask something. So that's that. It's on a list of things to do, and there's a lot going on right now. I'm working with I'm trying to get a company contractor for some software development, and coming from me being the least techie person I know, it's really, really tricky and it's uber expensive. And I'm trying to figure out the financing. They don't seem to have financing like you can get if you buy a really expensive Sleep Number bed with 0% financing if you pay it within 2 years. You know, every big monthly payment. They don't seem to have that when you're getting IT people to develop a software product for you. I think they should develop it. Why not? Where are these financing companies? Come on now. So I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. I hope it's not a pipe dream, but I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. Feel free to like, what is it? What is it Christina said? So I don't think it's here. Like, share, and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.